What's up? Welcome back to the Metalhead Car Show. Throughout the years, so many bands have played Wacken, to the point where it's almost hard to keep up with. But I wanted to look at what are some of the bands that have never played. And of course, there's so many new bands always coming out, and there's so many bands that just haven't got to it yet, but I want to look at some of the bands that probably should have at this point. So here are 6 bands that have never played Wacken open air. Let's get right into it. Starting off with System of a Down.
Wake up.
Now, System of a Down started in the late 1990s, putting out their first album called System of a Down, and they went to 2007 with their last album, Hypnotize. The band had a bit of a hiatus between 2008 and 2011, focusing on their own projects, but started back up in 2011 and have been going ever since. And since their hiatus, they've been bigger than ever, playing arenas and headlining festivals no matter where they go. And with being major headliners over in Europe, it kind of brings up the question of why they haven't played. I haven't really been able to find anything kind of solidifying why they haven't played, but the fact they play Germany so much and it's never even come up, and no one seems to be talking about why they haven't, is weird. Next up, punk legends, the Misfits. Misfits have been around forever, and they are one of the biggest influences to both punk and metal among any bands. So the fact they haven't been there is a bit odd. Now, both Glenn Danzig and Michael Graves have played Wacken on their own solo things, which they also likely would have played a little bit of Misfits on their shows, so it kind of brings up the question of why. It's pretty clear that Wacken's up for having them. It's pretty clear that some of the band members, Mike Graves no longer in the band, but some of the band members are up for playing it, so why? And I think Misfits as a band is about to come to an end, but with Misfits being bigger than they've ever been with a reunion of Glenn Danzig back in 2016, it's odd it hasn't happened. My thoughts that as a maybe why it hasn't happened is it would require having a punk band being a headliner at the Wacken Metal Fest. But if that's not the reason, then I'm not sure. Next up, a band who really loves Germany, that is Manowar. American power metal legends that have played in Germany more than any other country, it's kind of odd that hasn't happened. Now, supposedly, Manowar was actually in talks of playing at Wacken for the 2009 festival. I think back in 2012, they actually put a post up saying, should Manowar play at Wacken in 2013? So it's clearly been on their minds as something they should probably do at some point, but it hasn't happened. Hopefully it hasn't happened yet. So why hasn't this happened yet? I think one of the reasons could be is the fact that Manowar is very particular about the shows they play. They say they don't play many shows, but the shows they do play, they want them to be perfect. Now, Wacken's held almost everybody. They've held so many bands, and so many bands love returning every other year. So I think they are going to go out of their way to make sure the bands do have a very pleasant time whilst they're playing, and they do get what they need. So I think based on that, Manowar shouldn't be an issue. Also, since they have such a huge following in Germany, having them headline a festival wouldn't be a problem. So I think this is a band that will someday play at Wacken, but it just hasn't happened yet. Next up, Bolt Thrower. Bolt Thrower actually has kind of a weird story with Wacken. Bolt Thrower was invited to play at Wacken for the 2008 festival back in 2007. And this entire thing is kind of a weird situation, because they actually put a poll up on their website asking people should Bolt Thrower play at Wacken for the 2008 festival. They said they got a pretty overwhelmingly positive response on this from over 17,000 people voting on this poll, saying, yes, do it. And then Bolt Thrower came out and said, we're not going to do it. We're going to decline. Thank you very much. We're thrilled that we've been given this invitation to play at Wacken, but we don't think a lot of people who voted on that poll were huge into Bolt Thrower, and we don't think Wacken is the right festival for Bolt Thrower. Which that entire thing is extremely weird. You're allowed to say no. You're allowed not to want to do something. But to have such a positive response on your own website and then say, now we don't think people really want to see us, that's so weird. Again, people don't have to do every show. People can say no. But To get that response and then say no is extremely bizarre. And unfortunately, Bolt Thrower called it quits after their drummer died in 2015, so it's never going to happen, but they had a lot of chances to make it happen. As a personal little story with Bolt Thrower, I got to see them at the Montebello Rock Fest in 2015, and that was like their first Canadian show in almost 20 years. And when they did that tour, they were just doing Montebello, London, Ontario, and Vancouver, and that was it. Those were actually the last Bolt Thrower shows ever. So I got to see them do their first Canadian show in almost 20 years, and unfortunately I got to see them do one of their final shows ever. Very cool, but also pretty unfortunate. Next up, Death and Death to All. Coming out of Florida in the late 1980s, Death was one of the pioneers in death metal. Now, Death went to 1998 before the unfortunate death of their singer Chuck Schuldiner, and that kind of killed the band. Coming back with a new singer and a new name, they want to keep going with the old music of Death. So despite there being a 16-year hiatus and the possibility of doing so, they've actually played Germany more than any other country, so it's slightly odd it hasn't happened. Because even going as Death to All doesn't quite have the same draw as Death did, like any of these bands are going to have. But had Death or Death to All went to Wacken, I assume it would have went down brilliantly. And last up, Metallica. This is the band that everyone questions why it hasn't happened. You have some people that claim that Wacken believes that Metallica is too mainstream to have at Wacken, which, let's be honest, that is complete bullshit. But the reality is, Metallica will play anywhere. They will play any festival, so it just hasn't happened yet. Much like Manowar, there was a lot of talks of having Metallica in for 2009 or 2010 as a major headliner, but it just didn't work. Now, why is that? Who knows? All we know is Wacken will have them. A while ago, Wacken did a Ask Us Anything in their Instagram stories, and a lot of people asked, will you have Metallica there? And they got back to them saying, of course. It just hasn't happened yet. And let's be real. When it happens, it's going to sell unbelievably fast. I mean, it already sells out in like a couple hours every single year, but it's going to do great. And if they're able to get something like Metallica Manowar Rammstein or Metallica Manowar Iron Maiden, that show would be unbelievably fun. But again, much like I believe with Manowar, it'll happen, it just hasn't happened yet. But I want to know, what do you think? Is there any bands I've missed and bands that have never played Wacken? And of the 6 bands I've said, who would you love to see play there? Let me know in the comments. Thank you all so much for watching. Like, subscribe if you enjoyed what you've seen. I post on Tuesday, Thursday, and Sunday, and I'll see you later.